Picture this, a six-wheeled silver beast crashing through Alabama pine, clipping trees in seconds. A Finnish machine with a 270-degree swiveling cab carving through Lapland snow. A Canadian yarder dragging logs straight up a mountain on a steel tower 50 feet tall. These weren't tractors. They weren't bulldozers. They were the forgotten giants of 1980s forestry, the iron monsters that put loggers out of work, fed the world's sawmills, and rewrote the woods forever. Most people have never heard of them. Number 10. Tree Farmer C5D. We start in the fence rows of North America with one of the most beloved skidders ever built. The Tree Farmer brand, originally produced by Garrett, became known for popularizing the rubber-tired log skidder back in the late 1960s. By the early 1980s, the C5D, sold under the Canadian Car Company or Can-Car badge in Canada, was the most popular skidder in the late 1970s logging camps. In 1974, the brand changed colors from orange to lime green, and a generation of loggers cut their teeth on those bright machines. The C5D ran a Detroit diesel 3-53 engine in earlier versions, with later models using Deutz F5L912 5-cylinder air-cooled diesels. It came with a new process 4590 transmission, a Cotta 1610 transfer case, and Rockwell axles, and it was famous for its bare-bone simplicity. Loggers joked that the C5D had 6 levers, 3 pedals, and a strong 20-ton winch with a stiff mainline. It wasn't a Cadillac. There was no power shift, no joystick, and the hard-pulling brakes left operators sore at the end of every shift. But it was bulletproof, easy to service, and parts were cheap. The Tree Farmer brand traced back to Garrett, then through Hawker Siddeley, Canada, before Franklin purchased the entire Tree Farmer skidder division. Franklin continued to produce both the Franklin and Tree Farmer lines until the company shut down in 20. Today, the C5D is forgotten by most, but if you go into any old-timers logging shed in Wisconsin, Maine, or Ontario, there's a strong chance one is still parked there. Many are still pulling logs more than 40 years after they rolled off the line. Number 9. Timberjack 380. Now we move to a name that loggers in the 1980s could not stop talking about. Timberjack was founded in Woodstock, Ontario, in the 1950s by Wes McGill and Robert Simmons. Their breakthrough was an articulated four-wheel drive tractor with a winch on the back, and that machine became the foundation of an empire. The traditional Timberjack color was a reddish-orange that you could spot from a mile away in the Canadian woods. The Timberjack 380, introduced and sold throughout the 1980s, was the workhorse of the lineup. The 380 came as a cable skidder with options for Cummins or Detroit diesel engines, a Clark 3-speed transmission, an open or enclosed cab, and a Gearmatic cable winch. It weighed roughly 30,000 pounds, with an 84-inch blade up front and tires running 23.1 by 26 or 24.5 by 32, depending on the application. With a 6-cylinder turbo diesel, the 380B variant produced strong torque exactly where loggers needed it, pulling stubborn hardwood butts out of swampy ground. But the company itself had a wild ride in the 1980s. Timberjack was owned by Eaton Corporation through the 1970s and into the early 1980s. In 1984, Timberjack management completed a leveraged buyout from Eaton, becoming an independent company again. They were later acquired by Finnish forestry giant Rauma Repola through its FMG group, and eventually by John Deere in 2000. When that happened, Timberjack's iconic orange-red was gone forever, replaced by John Deere green, black, and yellow. The 3080 became one of the last great machines to wear true Timberjack colors, and that's why it's now a collector's piece. Number 8. John Deere 640D. In 1983, John Deere stepped up its forestry game with the D-Series skidder line, and the 640 boy was the star of the show. John Deere had been building skidders since 1965, when they introduced the 440 cable skidder with 59 horsepower. By 1973, they had launched the 740 skidder with 145 horsepower. But the D-Series, introduced in 1983, brought something new. The 640D featured a dual-function grapple with a 120-inch opening, which made it well-suited for grabbing extra-large bunches of logs in a single pass. Combined with its 540B and 740 stablemates, the D-Series defined what mid-1980s American mechanized logging looked like. The 640D used a John Deere diesel engine, a power shift transmission, heavy-duty axles, and a winch system that could pull serious tonnage out of swampy ground. The cab was sealed and isolation mounted to keep engine noise down, and an electronic monitor displayed vital machine functions, which was a big leap for forestry equipment in 19. A wide wheelbase increased stability, and load and speed sensing power steering delivered fast response when an operator was wrestling a 30-foot stem in tight terrain. What makes the 640D a forgotten giant is timing. It came right at the beginning of John Deere's rise to dominance in the woods. By 2000, Deere had purchased Timberjack, and the green and yellow became the standard colors of forestry. But before that, the original 640D, with its yellow paint scheme, was a workhorse for a decade. There are still 1980s 640Ds being run on small operations across Appalachia, Tennessee, and Quebec, and operators still talk about how they could fix one with a basic toolbox and a pair of pliers. Number 7. Caterpillar 5118. If you were logging in the Pacific Northwest in the 1980s and you had money, you bought a Cat. The Caterpillar 518 was Cat's signature skidder of the era. It weighed approximately 22,000 pounds with an operating length of 18 feet 10 inches, a width of 8 feet 9 inches, and a height of 9 feet 7 inches. The 5118 ran a Caterpillar 3304 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel and was built as both a cable skidder and a grapple version. The grapple variant became known as a Cadillac of skidders, with a fixed boom or swing boom grapple that could pinch a log and snake it down a mountain. The Cat 518 had a contemporary, the 528, which featured disc brakes instead of the older drum or air-over hydraulic systems used on most skidders of the time. The 528, with an ESCO swinging grapple, became one of the most coveted machines in West Coast logging. By the time Cat stopped production of the early 518 design and rolled out the 518C in the early 1990s, thousands of these skidders had pulled logs across British Columbia, Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. What pushed these machines into the forgotten category was Caterpillar's later move to focus on construction. Many Cat 518s ended up in the back of dealer lots in the 1990s, when bigger, faster machines came along. But the 518 had something most modern skidders don't have, a Caterpillar diesel engine that simply refused to die. There are 1978 and 1980 Cat 518s still running today, with hour meters that broke decades ago. And the truth is, nobody really knows how many hours they've actually worked. Number 6. Hydro Axe 411B. Now let's switch to a machine that didn't drag logs. It cut them down. The Hydro Axe brand traces back to 1965, and it became one of the most iconic fella buncher names in American logging. In the 1970s, Carroll Nelson and Len Vicina pioneered the first hydrostatic wheel-type fella buncher under the Hydro Axe brand, adapting earlier land-clearing mowers for timber felling. By the mid-1980s, the Hydro Axe 411B was a fixture in the southern pine plantations of Georgia, Alabama, and the Carolinas. The 411B had a John Deere or Cummins diesel engine, hydrostatic drive with a 2-speed range, hydraulic shear or saw heads, and 23.1 by 26 tires. It could clip a 6-inch pine in seconds, gather a bunch, and drop it for the skidder to pick up. National Hydro Axe, which built the brand, ran into financial trouble in the late 1970s. Omark was then purchased by Blount Inc. in 1985, which kept the Hydro Axe brand alive throughout the decade. The Hydro Axe 411B and its larger siblings, the 511B and 611B, ran the forests of the American South through the entire 1980s pulpwood boom. By 2006, the brand was rebranded as Prentice. By 2007, Caterpillar bought Blount's forestry division and absorbed everything. The Hydro Axe name vanished, but across the South, those silver and yellow machines from the 1980s are still rebuilt, retrofitted, and put back to work today, often by second or third owners who paid less than the cost of a single new modern feller buncher head. Number 5. Koehring 620 Track Feller Buncher. Now to one of the most influential machines almost nobody remembers by name. Koehring Canada Limited, based in Brantford, Ontario, was a Canadian engineering powerhouse known for durable equipment. In the early 1980s, Koehring was among several Canadian companies designing saw heads for feller bunchers. The lead engineer on the project was a man named John Koehring. His invention of the disc saw head, which allowed continuous cutting without stopping and minimized wood splintering for better lumber quality, would eventually change the entire industry. Koehring's version dominated in Canada and then took the emerging American market. The Koehring 620 was the first purpose-built track feller buncher of its era. It was built in Brantford, Ontario, and the original design team was led by Grant Somerville, who would later become the president of Tigercat. The 620 was, in industry terms, a game changer. Up until that point, most feller bunchers were either drive-to-tree wheeled machines or excavator conversions. The 620 was designed from scratch as a swing boom track machine, with the cutting head mounted on a hydraulic boom that could reach out and clip trees from a stationary position. In 1988, Timberjack acquired Koehring's construction equipment component. Several engineers, including John Kurelek, Tony Irachi, and Grant Somerville, suddenly found themselves out of work. Irachi, Somerville, and Ken MacDonald of MacDonald Steel Limited founded Tigercat Industries in 1992, building on everything they'd learned at Koehring. The Koehring 620 itself faded from memory, but its DNA lives on in every modern Tigercat, John Deere, and Caterpillar track feller buncher in the woods today. Number 4. Valmet 901 Single Grip Harvester. In 1984, in Finland, a Valmet engineer in Suolahti made a simple decision that changed forestry forever. The Valmet 901 was launched in 1984. Up until that point, harvesters were typically built on modified forwarder chassis, which meant compromise after compromise. Valmet engineers wanted to build a harvester from scratch, designed from the ground up specifically for harvesting. The breakthrough came when they developed a prototype thinning harvester. The problem was stability. After many tests, they came up with a solution that's still a hallmark of modern Komatsu harvesters today. They mounted a Valmet 935 head on the new chassis, and the Valmet 901 was born, one of the first purpose-built single-grip harvesters in history. The 901 was articulated with a 270-degree swiveling sound-insulated cab on the front frame. It had a Volvo TD45B four-cylinder diesel engine on the rear frame, large Nokia steel-belted off-road tires, and a Valmet 996 telescoping crane with a Valmet 942 harvesting head, which could fell, delimb, and cut a tree to length in one continuous motion. The Valmet 901 was specifically designed for thinning operations, but it also had enough off-road capability to work in tough terrain. What made the 901 a forgotten giant is what came after. Valmet was eventually absorbed into Partec, then sold to Komatsu, and the Valmet name disappeared from harvesters in 2008. But the 901 design lived on. The Komatsu 901 of today is in essence the direct descendant of the 1984 Finnish original. 40 years later, the same basic stability concept and design philosophy that Valmet engineers worked out in 1984 are still being sold worldwide. That's a quiet kind of immortality. Number 3. Franklin 170. In Franklin, Virginia, a man named Walter Drake built one of the most underrated logging brands in American history. Walter Drake had originally opened Franklin Auto Supply, distributing Pettibone rigid frame skidders, before launching the Franklin Logger in 1962. The hard nature of forestry operations forced rapid changes, and Drake quickly added planetary axles, gear-driven winches, heavier torque converters, and larger radiators. By the 1980s, Franklin had the most complete machinery range in the entire industry, including feller bunchers, cable skidders, grapple skidders, forwarders, and site preparation machines. The Franklin 170 grapple skidder was one of the brand's signature machines of the late 1980s and 1990s. It featured a Cummins 6-cylinder diesel, a single-arch ESCO grapple, a heavy-duty winch, and 28 Lel tires. The machine was big, slow, and reliable, exactly what southern loggers wanted. Franklin also built a feller buncher line that was popular with custom logging contractors throughout Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. In 1990, Franklin took its biggest swing. The company purchased the Tree Farmer skidder division from Hawker Siddeley, instantly absorbing one of the most respected names in skidder history. For the rest of the 1990s, Franklin manufactured both Franklin and Tree Farmer machines side by side. Sadly, the company couldn't survive the consolidation wave. Franklin shut down in 2010, taking both brands with it. But across the southern United States, used Franklin and Tree Farmer skidders from the 1980s are still working hard, holding up against machines worth 5 times as much. Number 2. Hydro X611B, the Big Brother. Now a quick stop for the bigger sibling that earned its own legend. While the 401B was the Hydro-Axe small tree workhorse, the 601B was the heavyweight. Built in the late 1980s by National Hydro-Axe under Blount ownership, the 601B was designed for serious southern pine operations, where speed and capacity meant everything. It ran an 8.3-liter Cummins diesel, hydrostatic drive with 2 speed ranges, 28 L by 26 tires, and a Koehring sawhead with a 22 to 24-inch cutting capacity. Some versions came with a Hydro-Axe branded high-capacity hot saw. The cab was a step above the 411B. It had air conditioning, a heater, and hydrostatic steering, which sounds basic now but was real luxury for a 1989 logger sitting in 95-degree Georgia heat. Operators reported that a skilled driver in a 61B could cut more than 1,000 trees in a single shift in a managed pine plantation. The disc saw could clip a 22-inch pine clean off the stump in less than a second. The 681B's downfall was simple. By the 2000s, Tiger Cat and John Deere had moved into wheeled feller bunches with bigger cabs, more comfort, and better service networks. Blount sold the Hydro-Axe line. The brand was rebranded as Prentice, and Caterpillar absorbed the lot in 2007. But the 681B is still considered one of the best feller bunches ever built for southern pine. Used 681Bs from the late 1980s are still bought, rebuilt, and put back to work, often selling for the same money, in real terms, that they sold for new. Number 1. Madill 071 Yarder. And finally, the king of the steep slope, the machine that defined Pacific Northwest logging in the 1980s. Madill Limited was founded by Sam Madill in 1911 as a blacksmith shop in Nanaimo, British Columbia. Over the decades, the company evolved into one of the most respected logging equipment makers in the world. The Madill 071 Yarder was their signature machine. It was a slackline yarder with a 50-foot tower, designed to drag logs up mountainsides where no skidder could go. The 071 was originally mounted on Terex 8230 crawler undercarriages, with some early units painted Terex green to match the dozers. Later versions used Madill's own crane carrier, or, most famously, a General Sherman military surplus tank undercarriage, the same one viewers later saw on the Discovery Channel show Axemen. Power options included a Detroit Diesel 6V92 with an Allison transmission, a Cummins Big Cam 3, or a Detroit 8V71T with water-cooled brakes. The yarder typically had 3 or 4 guy lines, with extensions and intermediate supports for difficult setups. The 1985 Madill 071 was the era's gold standard. By the late 1980s, Madill controlled the bulk of the worldwide cable yarder market for machines over 200 horsepower. Over its lifetime, Madill manufactured about 4,000 machines, and the company built a second plant in Kalama, Washington, just to keep up with demand. The Madill 071's importance can't be overstated. In the steep terrain of British Columbia, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska, this machine made it possible to log places that were otherwise unreachable. Without the 071, vast swaths of Pacific Northwest timber simply couldn't have been harvested in the 1980s. In 2011, Madill was acquired by Nicholson Manufacturing in Sydney, British Columbia, and the brand lives on at their 110,000 square foot facility. But the original 1980s 071, with its tank tracks and tall steel tower, is the machine every old Pacific Northwest logger remembers. So that's it for today. If you like this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching.